afternoon, David. How are you? How are you doing? You good? All is well?
I'm making out with all this downpours and downpours. We need some uppours too, man.
Well, it's that kind of climate in Trinidad these days. Everything seems to be pouring
Yes.
down on us in more
Yes.
ways than one.
Yes. Well, let
I
me
was
advise you that Richard will be he's in Glasgow, Scotland, and he's out there on credit union, commitments. He said he'll be joining us by the 5 o'clock or 5 o'clock hour. All right,
okay.
so it's all up to you to rumble the issues.
I was So what you thought, like I always like to engage you.
Yeah.
What you thought of the latest development where you're seeing that police officers, 8 of them, have
Hmm.
been charged for the June 2020 incident in Mova, resulting in the deaths of
For
three
you.
persons.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Do I mean I'm saying, how do you feel in terms of, do you think that this was a result, this particular course of action in terms of charges being laid, um, was motivated by the fact that there was a huge public outcry and protests arising in June of 2020? We know what came out of that. And then we see again another incident involving 3 young men, 2 teenagers,
Yeah.
where police officers who are alleged to have shot at them. The police, well, I can't say it's an allegation. The police admit to shooting at them, but said they were returning fire. So
Hmm.
those 3 young men, the young men that lost their lives,
Yeah.
um, we haven't had a completion of an investigation as it speaks to them in particular yet. But we have a completion in relation to the 3 who died in June 2020. Those 3 persons uh, being Noel Diamond, age 46,
Yeah.
Israel Moses Clinton, age 27, and Joel Jacob, age 38. So it took us some 2 years. We're right now in July 2022. This incident took place in the later part of June 27, 2020. So it took 2 years and a little bit for investigations to be complete, for, I guess, reports to be collated. I understand that the director of public prosecutions did the novel thing of visiting the locus where the incident took place.
Yeah.
I would imagine that he would have gone there for a purpose. Maybe for the sake of the public listening, David, when we have reports of an incident taking place, for instance, this shooting in Mova in June 2020.
Yeah.
You remember what was in the public space is there was CCTV footage of uh, carrying imagery of persons engaging with the police. And when we say engaging, I'm using very euphemistic language.
Yeah.
Basically, what happened is we saw the driver of the vehicle coming out, stepping out with his hands in the air. One could only presume that if his hands in the air, and we're not in the carnival season, he simply was surrendering.
Yes.
So the position was similar activity was taking place in relation to the other persons in the vehicle. The police didn't seem to recognize that these persons were surrendering. They seemed to carry the notion that they were engaging them. But that engagement, if persons are being perceived to be posing a threat to the police, the use of force that the police must engage in order to diffuse or um, remove that threat before them is not deadly force. They ought to be able to assess the situation and determine what is the correct form of force or what is the correct
Yes.
approach in order to neutralize the threat posed to them.
Yes, I agree.
Um, so when we look at what happened in Mova, if it is we were to follow what is the editorial in the newspaper, um, you can't have persons offering themselves to the police unarmed, and um, what is being returned is gunfire. It simply means to say one has to weigh the possible threat or the perceived threat that the police carried in that moment, because remember, what we're looking at is that in that pinpoint in time, when the police are facing an imminent threat, they have within seconds to compose themselves, to compose their minds, address their mind to what threat is being posed at their person, and adopt and adjust their reaction to suit. You and I could sit in the bleacher and watch a football match and direct a center forward to do a number of things. Throw his body, head the ball, trap the ball, kick with his left foot, kick with his right foot. But we're not there. We are not in his shoes. We're not wearing his boots and standing up in the mud in an 18-yard box and crosses are coming wing towards you. Yeah. So his ability to adjust is an adjustment that he must make in the moment. And very often everybody's watching the game and they're critical of what he should have done and what ought not have been done. It's the same thing with the police, and I'm not trying to minimize their activity. I'm simply trying to put it in language that for the lay person listening to us, they can understand. If you're a police officer, the responsibility you have is a serious responsibility. You have a duty not just to protect and serve, but to protect and serve with pride. And with pride, that motto simply means that there must be taste, and you must execute your function with decorum and do it in a way that, yes, you're protecting and serving, but you're not doing it at the expense of people's human rights. You're not doing it at the expense of the rank and file's dignity and integrity.
Yeah.
So what you're doing as an officer is not to demean and belittle, not even the so-called criminal. You can't demean and belittle them because they have as much rights as any one of us who do no wrong.
That's right.
Particularly when it's on an allegation. So I am not prejudging this matter. The matter is now officially before the court. Eight police officers have been charged for murder. It means to say that 8 police officers are on duty out there now to protect and serve us. So in as much as some of us may be quite amenable to learning that officers are now on the receiving end of the law, because there are people out there who have the view that, the officers are out there and they fly in the face of the law and they do what they want and they have so much discretionary powers that they have legal power to do what people can't do by other means. So you might find persons gloating out there, but what they don't understand is that this process that they're going to engage on now, this process means that we have 8 police officers from the IATF, the Inter-Agency Task Force, less out there, and we're going to have to replace them with other officers. Now, whatever elite training these individuals would have gotten, it means that we have 8 less elitely trained individuals out there protecting us. So there ought to be some contingency plan in place where officers must be continuously trained to perform the function of elite officers. So these persons could, as of this morning, or as of the date of suspension of these individuals, could step into their realm and fulfill that function, because we need people, law enforcement out there to protect and serve. Now, having said that, the question may be asked, has justice been served in this circumstance? The issue of police killings is nothing new to this country. We have had between 2015 and 2022, more than 200 civilians dying at the hands of police officers. What would have made these individuals precious in the eyes of the public is this got sufficient social media coverage. So these individuals, Joel Jacob, Noel Diamond, and Israel Clinton, they would have been elevated into social media popularity because of the nature of the incident, and also because for one of the very first times we were able to recover some level of CCTV footage that captured that moment when they met their demise. Now, in all fairness to the officers, I'm not in any way trying to encroach on anything that may be of evidential value that will fulfill itself in the courtroom in the months to come. Yeah. The camera footage, and the public must bear in mind, the camera footage only offers a segment of what took place, or the camera footage that was on social media and in the public space only captured a minuscule snippet of the events as it unfolded. So some of us out there who may have seen the driver put his hand in the air and would have seen another guy stepping out of the vehicle and while stepping out being shot, we may already form the opinion that is it. The police don't have a leg to stand on. We need to bear in mind that we don't know if any shot was fired initially or any shot was fired at any point in time. The police may have responded in relation to gunfire. They may have responded in relation to things said by the individuals, because let us say, and I'm not speaking to this June 27, 2020 incident in Mova. I'm saying generally, and this is for the public knowledge out there. If it is you use violent language towards the police, let us say you threaten to shoot, because you're growing up in Trinidad, and sometimes people like to grand charge and they have plenty gun talk, and they have nothing. And I'm using Trini language when I say that. If it is you're using threatening language and you motion that you're going to draw on something on their jersey, how is the police supposed to react in that moment, David? How do you feel if it is somebody's threatening you? Let's just use you as an example. If you are on the street in Labrie and a man makes a threatening remark that he can shoot you, and he dips into his breast pocket of his coat, or he reaches for the back of his jeans. In that moment, what would be your immediate thought in that moment, and what would be your immediate reaction?
Well, as a civilian, first of all, it will be putting you in a sort of bummy situation where you don't know what he's dipping for. If I'm a police officer or an officer that will enforce the law, and I have my personal fireman, well, that could be a telling matter, because I certainly will be defending myself there, because I don't know what he's going for.
Right. So that's a very good answer. So in other words, what you just indicated is you're assessing the situation.
Yeah.
I mean, from the time you started to use the violent language, you already get bummy. In other words, emotions start to bubble inside of you. Your mind starts to work, and you're beginning to determine now, what sort of action should I take? Should I run? But if I run and he have a gun, I could get shot in my back.
That's right.
If I take evasive action, how much evasion could I execute in that moment to protect my entire person? Because evasive action could be running behind another civilian. He could take two or out at that point.
Yeah.
So when it is you're a police and you have a function and you go into these, and I don't want to be lashing the hotspots, but we're using the hotspots because it is on record that we have 166 hotspots in this country.
Yeah.
Right? That's the scientific data, the empirical data out there. So if you find yourself in one of these 166 hotspots on duty, and the people come out there, and we see it on the social media videos, they rush you, they crowd you, they pointing up in your face, they curse you. You can imagine when we as human beings, you and I, when we have to face a single relative who wants to assault us for whatever reason, one relative, or we have to confront the other individual who we may find ourselves, for whatever reason, maybe he's a heated driver, figure you gave him a bad drive and he pull up alongside you and cuss you. You can imagine how your emotion and adrenaline starts flowing in that moment. Just multiply that by 10, 15, 20, 100 times when you're a police officer out there and you're confronted by a group and a crowd. And the thing is, you're under camera, because even if you're not under elite CCTV footage cameras, everybody have a camera out here now. Cell phones.
Yes.
So, and this cell phone footage, once it's available to the PCA, is David West and the PCA coming at you.
Yes.
The director. And they're objective and they're enthusiastic. So they're willing to grab onto any statement they could get from anyone that could help advance the investigation, and any footage that could help narrow the evidential search. So every time you go out there to protect and serve, every day you're under a microscope, and you're under a microscope not only from your colleagues, because I understand there's one of the officers of the 16 arrested, 18 in total, one of them offered evidence, one of them gave a statement, and so on. We don't know what the content of that is. I'm not saying that he gave a statement against his colleagues, but let us say he offered something that was not in keeping with the police version of the facts.
Right.
Meaning that it showed that there was some sort of inconsistency, something they say that he contradicts what their version of what went down.
Yeah.
Then it lends itself to crashing their believability and credibility. So as a police in that moment, now you have to be mindful of your colleagues.
Yeah.
And what is happening around you. So think about it. This is you, an individual, David McIntyre. You're a member of the interagency task force.
Yeah.
You're on duty. You're going there on a crime scene. You're chasing a vehicle. You manage to get the vehicle to stop. You give chase. You're wondering, these individuals coming out of the vehicle, maybe a hand flail, an elbow in a 45-degree angle, stepping out of the vehicle. Remember, the man ain't coming out with his hand on the side. The man coming out, opening the door and projecting his wrist and his finger movement in your direction.
Yeah.
Seconds come, because bullets don't travel at 5 kilometers per hour. So a simple flail of the wrist, a switch of the wrist, a flick of the hand. Remember, you're not meeting men who are standing like Cipriani's statue in Broadway, and with the hand on the side and watching you and you watching them. It's not like Columbus statue by the cathedral where some still object. It's a human being dressed in a particular way. You profile them in a particular way, and remember, you were giving chase. This is not a vehicle that you run your siren and they pull to the side. You run your siren, you're giving chase, and them running and you're running them down. So an opinion is being formed that maybe something illegal is happening, maybe they have something illegal to hide, maybe they have reason to run. You form a reasonable person wouldn't run when they hear a siren. They wouldn't run the vehicle when I say run. They would bring it to a still. So there were things were happening on both sides, and the public needs to understand. You have to step into the shoes of not just Joel Jacob, Noel Diamond, and Israel Moses Clinton, but you have to step into the shoes of the police officers on duty. Because all it takes is a pinpoint in time to govern one's destiny. A pinpoint in time determines whether you run off the road and crash into a lamppost, or whether you skid and slide into human beings standing at the side of the road. A pinpoint in time determines how you react in a moment. Now, in no way, it may sound like I'm making excuses for the police. I'm just trying to recapture the moment. And look at it as balanced as I could. And I still can't put myself as balanced as I could, because I'm looking from the bleachers of life. I'm looking at the football match from the grandstand. I am not the three individuals. I'm not Noel Jacob. I'm certainly not I'm not Joel Jacob, I'm not Noel Diamond, and I'm not Israel Clinton. So I can't say from their position how they were feeling. And I certainly had the 8 police officers charged for the murder. So, but in as much as we are trying to recapture, we're trying to be balanced. And however, having said that, I like to talk law. There's the Criminal Law Act, and the population should understand that in Trinidad and Tobago, there's a use of force provision in that act. And if we were to look at and I'm just quoting in case we have a listener who would like to go back and read the legislation. We have the Criminal Law Act, Chapter 1004. It's Act number 90 of 2000. That is the current piece of legislation in this country that governs the police use of force. So when we hear about police use of force and the use of force policy, or we hear about police violence, or you hear that police, they overreact and they use guns when they didn't need to use guns, and the fellows were unarmed and you shot them in the back. There's a provision of the legislation that speaks to how police, when they're going to make an arrest or execute an arrest, how they ought to conduct themselves. And it's a very short piece of shortly worded provision. So I want to quote it. Bear with me. Section 4, subsection 1 of the Criminal Law Act says, and I'm quoting here straight from the Act, a person may use such force as is reasonable in the circumstances in the prevention of crime, or in effecting or assisting in the lawful arrest of offenders or suspected offenders, or of persons unlawfully at large. So when we look at the language, you need to break the language up, because every word carries meaning and carries a certain sanctity. So let me say it again. A person may use such force. In this case, a person is police officers. They may use such force. So the law allows police to use force. There is nothing in law that says a police cannot use force in the fulfilling of his duty and the execution of his function when interacting with the public. The law allows for that. But the force must be reasonable. So in other words, there's a condition attached to the force that the police use. They mustn't abuse the discretion to use force. They must exercise the use of force in a manner that is consistent with reasonableness. So you must satisfy the reasonableness test. And every what is reasonable is really determined in the circumstances. So there are three sets of words there. You must use force. You must use force that is reasonable in the circumstances. So in an instance where men are exiting a vehicle and they're exiting the vehicle and one man, both hands in the air, and you could see clearly, as clear as daylight, because the lighting conditions were bright, that this man had his hands in the air, that his body language isn't that he's pointing something at you. Then there's a clear indication from the circumstances of his actions that this is not a man looking to attack you. This is a man stop his vehicle and he's coming out with the hands up in the air in a surrender position.
Yeah.
So in using force in that moment, that officer may know that, or the officers, the 8 men or the 15 to 18 men that were there would know whether we should engage the ammunition in our pistol, revolver, AR-15, whatever was used, or whether we should just hold fire and see if we could get him to stand still, go down on the ground, and then we could proceed to search him, and then restrain him, detain him, arrest him. So remember, all of this taking place in seconds. This is like Olympic 100, 200, 300 of a second. This assessment is spontaneous, continuous, and contemporaneous. In other words, it's happening in the moment. So back to where we are. When it is the second man was stepping out, opening the back door, and he's stepping out too, and his hands are flailing to the left or the right, meaning that you're coming out with your hands. Remember, he wants to demonstrate also. When he's pushing his hands out as he's coming out, is to show that there's nothing here. I have no gun. I have nothing that is a threat to you. So when he picks up gunfire now, and when the man whose hands up in the air picks up gunfire, one has to ask oneself whether the force that was used in the circumstances was reasonable. And if it is, the opinion is it was not reasonable, then we may have to do an assessment as to whether the actions of the police were justifiable. So when the public is assessing what has happened, that a charges has been laid, it's only in the courtroom that we will be able to hear the evidence and hear what transpired in the moment from different witnesses, and then be able to make an assessment as to whether the actions of the police officers was excessive. Remember also, the police has a responsibility to effect a lawful arrest. And it's not just an unlawful arrest, but it's not just a lawful arrest, but it's a lawful arrest at persons who are sometimes unlawfully at large. So let's deal with that second part. When you have individuals who are wanted by the police, and these individuals don't make themselves available, meaning they don't get an attorney and go to the station and give themselves up under the full guise, under the full gear of legal representation, the full umbrella of legal representation, or they don't volunteer themselves, even when they are well aware that the police need them because they have a view that they may have information that could assist, meaning the police wants them to question them.
Yeah.
And you're staying away. Doesn't it not lend itself to you may have a reason, or that individual may have a reason to restrain themselves or refrain themselves or to avoid the police, meaning there's a negative connotation that it comes with avoidance. If it is you and a friend fall out, and that individual comes to work and tries to avoid the room that you're in, or sees you in the corridor and tries to look on the floor when they pass and look at the ceiling, or avoid you, or perhaps in your community you have a neighbor who simply don't talk to your ears. So if he sees you in the yard, he tends to enter and do like he haven't even seen you. So there, in other words, the position would be that one tends to associate the actions and the behavioral pattern of an individual as a sign of guilt, or a sign of uncomfortableness, or a sign of we have something to hide. Their interpretations. So when police persons are wanted by the police and they don't make themselves available, and the police have to come get them, And then when the police coming to have a chat with them now, you're driving off, you're running off. The police have to assess in that moment that you're avoiding them, whether there's probable cause and a reasonable basis to approach you. And probable cause is a legal term. Probable cause could be we may be missing, somebody may be missing money, and then they notice that let me just use it in a household, and you notice your little brother went and buy a whole bag of snacks. You want to know where you get money for that. So there is probable cause to believe that your unemployed little brother, mischievous little brother, may have made use of your pocket money to enhance his diet, to go eat something nice and delicious. You know, he works nowhere, he draws no pay, and mommy or daddy didn't give him any Christmas money, no birthday money, and no chores, money for chores that he would have performed. So you have probable cause to believe that, you know, your money may have been spent lavishly by someone else. So having happened, your position, maybe you formed in your mind a reasonable basis to suspect him that he may have relieved you of what is yours. Now, with all that probable cause and reasonable view, he may be very well innocent, you know, because the neighbor could have given some snacks that she got. She would have said something with him through defense. So sometimes the police, with probable cause and reasonable basis to stop you and question you, may get it entirely wrong. But when it is you avoid that dialogue and you avoid giving yourself up, you're opening yourself up now for confrontation in the street. You're opening yourself up now for a warranted being executed at your home. And now, when the police come and things get out of hand, the first to say, the civilian nowadays, the first person to say, well, I don't know what they come here for. It have the 1% out there who doing worse than we, and you don't go by their house. They come and they violate my property. They kick down my potted plant. They break the front door glass. They come inside of the house. So you may find persons, David, where they when the police come to confront them, the police may come to confront them on different bases. You may be a person of interest, as they say. You may be somebody that they want to question. You may simply be a suspect, which is they have good reason to come arrest you. But sometimes on this fact-finding mission that the police is on, or the police may be on, they may find themselves being confronted by lawyers and being confronted, and not, I didn't mean in the moment, but at some point being confronted by lawyers and having to answer to another authority as to whether when they were doing what they were doing, whether they exercised that function with reasonable care. Now, back to the police shootings. Over the years, the efflorescence of allegations against police and the use of violent force or unreasonably violent force, that continues to evolve. And I want to bring it home by not that I'm moving away from this situation concerning the June 27, 2020 mover situation, but seeing that we had a recent and even more recent one involving these young boys, where you remember in downtown Port of Spain, the police were giving chase to a vehicle. The vehicle crashed into that wall in the vicinity of what we used to say is Independence Square South. So they crashed into the wall by Republic Bank, and arising out of that crash, individuals emerged from the vehicle, and Isaiah Roberts, age 17, Leonardo Williams, age 17, and Fabian Richards, age 21, on July 2nd, the three of them were shot. And we know what happened as a result of that. These young men died, and the post-mortem report, the pathological report, the forensic analysis of their bodies reflected that they all perished with gunshot entry wounds to the back. Right? Now, I would love to be wrong in stating what I'm stating there, but I'm consulting the newspaper and following the editorial to try to ascertain if sometimes when I read these things, if what I'm reading is the correct thing, because you don't want to be misquoting anything at all. Now, let's up the ante a little bit, because I was reading recently where one of our elite lawyers, if I may put it that way, one of the more popular one, Mr. Umlala, he is representing the interests of a survivor, and on the Trinidad Express newspaper, July 9, 2022, he wrote a letter seeking from the Commissioner of Police office, or the office of the Commissioner of Police, certain things that would be of evidential value that would help prove his case that what the police did was shooting at unarmed men. And I'm referring specifically to the two 17-year-olds and 21-year-old. And let me just make a small quote of the things that he was seeking, and it will assist the discussion where we're moving. In the correspondence, Mr. Lala asked for all the CCTV footage from the TTPS Ministry of National Security cameras, as well as from any surrounding businesses. He asked for all body camera recordings. And let's take a pause there. I read that and I smirked him. Mr. Lala is asking for the CCTV footage from the TTPS and the Ministry of National Security cameras, as well as any surrounding businesses. That's two sources he's seeking camera footage from, right? I have faith that there may be camera footage from the businesses in the area, meaning in and around Republic Bank. I would imagine the bank, one would hope that the bank would have CCTV footage, private cameras surrounding their bank, so in case anything happens, they can do their own investigation. And then, it being Independence Square South and downtown Port of Spain, the surrounding businesses would have assumed the same position. So getting footage from private businesses, I have faith and confidence in that. But when he's asking for footage from the Ministry of National Security cameras, we know that it has been in the public space from our goodly Minister of National Security that over 1,700 cameras in this country, 900 plus, are not working.
Yeah.
So he never said to us which ones are working. He only said that 900 not working. I mean, I was looking forward to the detail as to which is not working.
Yeah.
So, I could assess where I am in relation to the police. Not that I have anything to hide, but I am putting myself in a civilian position. Every civilian would like to know if you're looking at a camera that's recording you or not. So when Mr. Lala is asking for CCTV footage that will help from an investigative point of view to exonerate the police in relation to using deadly force when no similar force was being posed at their person, then the footage could both help police as well as civilian. In this case, if it is the footage not available and Mr. Hines or the police were to reveal, well, these cameras were part of the 900 that not functioning, then it is in a very wry way, this is laughable, because we could have fixed that situation and avoid where we are now. So we may be seeing a situation where the existence of proper upkeep of the CCTV footage cameras 1,700 plus would have assisted the public and the police in a real manner. Now, let us touch on the other aspect of it, Dave. When it is you want to get video footage from businesses, it's not as forthcoming as one may think,
Exactly.
I have had instances where the police approach my office and they ask me if they notice that I have cameras projected onto the main road. And they asked me if they could view my camera footage because they believe I could be of assistance in relation to things that may have transpired in the community. I know to myself, given my knowledge of the law, that I cannot say no, although if I say no, they could use another means of getting the footage. It's either I voluntarily assist them or they do it by force. So I don't want to have to be faced with any confrontation. So I comply, I make the footage available, they draw what they have to draw, whatever they do with the footage, I don't know. And sometimes if they find what they need to find, well, then I've been of assistance. But that is my approach, meaning that I make the footage available because there's a flip side to it. And the public needs to understand that the police can come with a warrant, let us say in the name of David McIntyre, which carries his home address. And in that warrant, they will be able to say, on the basis of what they have what they have reasonable basis to believe, meaning that you have things of evidential value that may assist them in their investigation. They wish to view your camera footage, and if it is based on the warrant that they have in their hand, you're still not volunteering to hand it over. They could, by use of the warrant, forcibly take it. So they show you the warrant, which is a document that indicates the details of what in particular they're looking for. Just by way of analysis, I have a warrant in front of me, which I'm not going to actually quote a copy of a warrant, that is. I'm not going to quote my details on this particular document because that is confidential, but I'm just going to explain what a warrant looks like. When the public is confronted with a warrant from police officers and they're claiming that they have this document that allows them to enter your home with or without your consent, this warrant must contain certain particulars. Number one, it must have the name and the regimental number of the police officer who is attempting to execute the warrant. So let us say the officer is David McIntyre. You must be able to quote your regimental. If your regimental is 17568, you must say my name is David McIntyre. I am stationed at the Besson Street Police Station. I'm working from this unit. We have reason to believe that there are things of evidential value in your home. We have in our possession a warrant, and this is the document. And he shows you the document. You are supposed to be able now to hold the document in your hand.
Yeah.
And you could look at the document now and you will see the officer's name, who is the person responsible for getting the document, meaning that he has to apply for a warrant and he gets the warrant in his name. So it will reflect what is the name of the officer that got it. Then it ought to reflect also the reasonable cause that he is attempting to achieve, meaning that if his reasonable cause is to enter your premises with a view to searching for particular things, he must be able to identify what is the particular thing. So he should be telling you, we have reason to believe that when we search here, we may find things of evidential value, and those things must and say what it could be. So let us say it's guns and ammunition or dangerous drugs, right? They get a tip off that there's dangerous drugs at the house. They could come with a warrant, and the warrant must state that we are looking for things of evidential value. We have reason to believe that dangerous drugs are being mind-distorting drugs. Dangerous drugs are being stored on this compound. Guns and ammunition are here, or stolen items on the compound because your neighbor missing his toolbox, or he's missing his television set, or money has been stolen from Republic Bank and they believe that the money has found itself into a residence in La Aquita, and the intelligence revealing that it's in this house. It must be reflect that, the reason that we believe that things of evidential value, vis-a-vis, example, money, the proceeds of a theft at Massey stores in Arima, or the mind-distorting drugs, firearms and ammunition, all of that details on it. So the name of the officer, it must be the name of the member of the household or somebody living in that household. It must carry the address of the household, and it must also carry the suspected, or the thing that the police looking for, whatever the police suspect may be there. And that document must also be signed by a justice of the peace. If the justice of the peace, let us say, is Paula May or Keith Rowley, that justice of the peace must sign the document. And if it's unsigned, then that itself lends itself to forming the view that this warrant may not be a document that is legitimate. And it must also be stamped with the justice of the peace stamp. Now, all of this, you could imagine a warrant being executed, David, and the police engaging a civilian at his front door, and they're going through this tutorial of what a warrant looks like, and what are the features on the warrant, and what's supposed to be there and what's not supposed to be there. And then the first thing a civilian like to say, well, it died my brother name in. That warrant not in my name. But the thing is, once you confirm that this is the residence of your brother, then it doesn't matter when they come. They don't need to execute the warrant in his presence. So they may come to execute a warrant in Fareed Ali's name. But David McIntyre comes to the door and say, well, Mr. Ali isn't home, you know. That doesn't mean to say the police can't come in. The warrant is not for them to enter your premises when you are wrong. The warrant is to enter your premises. Now, there's a timeline on a warrant. A warrant usually comes with a time frame. It's not a document that you get that allows you to come in June alone, or allows you to come in the month, or come, you know, it's made out in the month of June, but you could come in December. It's usually that you have a reasonable time frame. So you tend to, as a police officer, tend to get the warrant just when, or just about when you're ready to execute the warrant. So there's another process, an important aspect of that process. And I'm saying this because, and the reason why I'm going into the detail of a warrant like that is, let us be real. This situation with confrontation between members of the public and police officers is not going to stop. It's going to happen tomorrow. The police is going to be killing people next year, and they're going to be killing even more people in the years to come. The trend has been there since 2015 to 2022, more than 200 civilians spread over a period of 7 years. So if we were to use empirical data, over the next 7 years, we should expect another 200 people to die or more. It don't go down, and it tends to go up. So what Monsieur don't pass here, and it's important that the public understand and prepare themselves for dealing with police officers, and to understand what their rights are when these police officers come to their homes. If it is, David, and again, I'm back with your example, right? Let us say they come to your home, and they find, they go through the process, and they show you the warrant, and you're satisfied that it's legitimate, and you allow them into your premises. And they search and they find, you know, long time we used to use the expression on the street, you have a fat back TV, you know, it's not a flat screen that is nice and slender. You have, you know, those long time desktop computers used to have like a big back piece holding all the components, all the material. So it's a big, huge thing and heavy. Sometimes what used to happen with those TVs, when the police come to execute a warrant, the drugs, the civilians open the back of the TV and they stuff the drugs inside of the TV and screw it back down, you know. So when you come to execute a warrant now, you're not expecting to search in a drawer, or search in the drawer with the underwear, or search in the drawer with the t-shirts, or search in the back of the wardrobe, or on top of the wardrobe, or behind the bed head. Sometimes what they do is they unscrew the back of the TV, and they stuff the plastic bag of marijuana inside it and screw it back down. So the police now may have been falling, they may have been deceived on previous actions in relation to things like that. But then, you know, the man on the street does talk, the same fella going on the road and laugh and say when they come and they execute the warrant, they never find nothing. I had everything stored, this stuff in the back of the TV.
Yes.
So then word spread on the street, and the intelligence get back to the police, so the police know the next time they go in our house, open the back of the TV.
Yeah.
So the next time they go in the house, open the kitchen stove, the oven, and check it. The next time the police go, they might say, you know what, open the freezer. What looks like the ice cream 1 liter container is marijuana.
Yeah.
So as time does make everybody wiser, time makes the police in tune with the science on the ground. And so when people say the police come in our house and they went and they showed down all the groceries, they went in the kitchen cupboard and put my hand in the back there and pull out that. They want to know why it is they go in there. They go in there because very likely their past experience may have been behind the melon john and the cucumber, and inside of the big bowl of fruits that is sizable. Might be 6 marijuana joint, more than 30 grams of weed.
Yeah.
Mixed up in the ice cream container in the fridge is something posing like a Flavor Right. Let me use a retired example. A Flavor Right peanut ice cream is really marijuana in a Flavor Right peanut container.
Yeah.
So the police comes in, and when he goes to the freezer, seeing that we in the fridge, when he goes to the freezer, what he ought to do is to search the areas of the house, and this is where the public needs to hear me. The search that is taking place in your house must be done in your presence.
Right.
So David, when it is they'll enter your gallery and they come in with the warrant into your dining area, the walk and the search must be done on point, in time.
Yeah.
Footstep for footstep, the police should walk as you walk, and you should walk as they walk, and you should walk where they walk. In other words, if they're searching the dining room, don't go and search the dining room and you have me lock up in the gallery. Because then you could plant a gun, you could plant weed, and you could put something of evidential value and say, well, look, we're looking for this $200, and we find it right there in crisp notes on top of your desk, and you say, but I didn't have no money. So the first thing the civilian says is the police plant it. So to avoid the police planting anything, what the civilian should do is insist when the police come in the house that here we're going on, officer. I'm not trying to obstruct you from doing what you have to do. You know, you have to do what you have to do, and I have to do what I have to do.
Yes.
And this is my house. And the compromise is that in as much as you want to do what you have to do, and the law allows you to do that, I have to protect myself from you because I am as skeptical about you as you are about me.
Yeah.
And I'm entitled to that. Because we know where we go with police officers. 8 of them get charged for murder recently. And we have officers like that out there, rogue officers. I'm not saying this 8 rogue. I'm just simply saying that, you know, I'm using the editorial and saying that police have a way of finding themselves on the other end of the law, not that this particular 8 are. So when it is they enter into the kitchen area and they begin the search and they're removing the plates, and they're removing the spoons, and they're going behind the greaseproof paper, and they're moving the big bottle of Nescafe.
Yeah.
And they move the ketchup, the Matu's ketchup bottle, and they're looking for things behind that. And they say they find ammunition. That ammunition must be found in your presence, so you can't deny it.
That's right.
So what they do at this stage now is they take the warrant, the document that they showed you, and they go on the back of the warrant, which is usually the blank side of the warrant. The warrant is usually a one-sided, a page that has writing on one side, and the back side of it, if we will put it that way, the other leaf is blank, is white.
Yeah.
So what the officer's supposed to do now is they say, sir, I'm going to write what I found here, and in the moment, I'm making a note of it as we would have discovered it. So you'll see I entered a 3-bedroom flat house through the front door. When I entered the front door, I spoke to David McIntyre. He told me that he owns the house and he lives here. I executed the warrant. I showed him the warrant. He was satisfied that the warrant is legitimate. He allowed me in. We proceeded to the kitchen area. We began the search in David McIntyre's presence. All of this is going on the back of the document, you know.
Yeah.
When it is we opened the refrigerator, we saw a 1-liter container that carried the name Flavor Ride Ice Cream Peanut. We had reason to open that, and when we opened it, we find ammunition. It wasn't ice cream. It wasn't creamy. It was metallic.
Yeah.
So they make the note that we found the metallic-looking objects resembling that of ammunition in the Flavor Ride container in the fridge.
Yeah.
And then that note is made, and what they do is they tell the David McIntyre, "Sir, you're satisfied that what I wrote here on the back of the warrant is what happened, right? It is a true account of the facts as it happened. I ain't come in and hit you a slap. I ain't kicking your mouth. I ain't telling your mother so and so. I ain't use no obscene language. I ain't abuse you. We talk like decent, reasonable human being. I made the entry. You're satisfied what is here is here. And when the police makes the entry, he invites the civilian and says, Mr. McIntyre, could you just endorse your signature right next to where the note is made as evidence that this you are satisfied that this is what I wrote here is a proper representation of things as it happened. And you are free in that moment as a civilian to refuse to endorse that, because the minute you endorse that, what you're doing is you're lending believability, credibility, and legal sanctity to the note that was made here. You may be basically, as we say in language on the street, you're signing your own death warrant, meaning that when you go to court, you don't have a legal leg to stand on. So sometimes when the police do the correct thing and the civilian signs, he's helping and assisting the police in prosecuting himself. He has a decision to make in that moment, whether he should sign the document or not. But bear in mind that when you as a civilian endorse your signature, what you're doing is putting yourself in the onerous position of being unable to refute that which happened on the day in question in court.
Yeah.
So let us say the police convinces you to make the entry and you sign the document. They smile within themselves and say, ah, boy, we have him here. What the police does next is he has to corroborate that it was done in front of police officers. So he would sign, the man who invited to sign, he would sign Paul Jones Officer Paul Jones witnessed David McIntyre endorse the document and he signed underneath. And then he would invite the most senior officer there, because they remember they would have come with a team, and the police don't come to your house alone.
Right.
He would invite the most senior officer standing there to come and endorse under his signature and under the civilian signature that this will happen. So now you have a very elite document, a warrant lawfully executed, a warrant where they did a search, and they did the search in your presence. They found items of evidential value that could be used against you in a court of law that may cause you to be criminally liable and make a jail. And they convince you, because they talk so nice and they seduce you into signing this thing, that you sign the document believing that this thing could only help you. You sign it, and then when the police officer who talked to you so sweet and so nice, soft, serve you this narrative, he signs that he witnessed you sign it. All of them, including the most senior officer, come in to say, well, we did everything above board, and the evidence of it is on the back of the warrant. So when it is you hear, so we're moving forward now, right? We talk about warrants. When it is you hear that a man come to court and the warrant was never backed, but they say they find guns and ammunition, that's supposed to ring a red herring in the back of your head. Yeah. You're supposed to know now that is not the law, because since in the year 2004, there was a very popular case called the Frankie Boudram judgment, which is referred to now as the Frankie Boudram judgment, Frankie Boudram versus the state.
Yeah.
We had a auto supply shop in San Juan in Trinidad. And what happened is, a man days before, the police had to execute a warrant on the San Juan Auto Supplies business. A man days before went to the Oval to watch a cricket match and parked in George V Park, which is now Mandela Freedom Park, right? Yeah. The man parked his vehicle and went to watch a cricket match. He parked a pickup. When he come back, the pickup gone. When it is, he started asking questions. They have reasons to believe that the pickup was scrapped. And when it was scrapped, you know what happens when you scrap a vehicle in this country? It ends up all over the place.
Yes.
The police have reason to believe that San Juan Auto Supplies may have something of evidential value. When they went there to execute the warrant, they didn't meet the owner, they met employees. And when they were trying to ascertain whether there were things of evidential value, they presented their warrant, right? Yeah. And Officer Gay, when he presented the warrant as the name of the officer, he was allowed access to the premises. And when they searched, the owner of the place, it is alleged the owner of the place say, boss, I want to talk to all you. So from the time he started to go down that path, it ring a red herring went off, a bell going off in the officer said, I know, well, boy, it looked like we have him here.
Yes.
It is alleged that the individual confessed that, he know that what he has there is something of evidential value that the police looking for, and he's seeking to get a little easier. So having carried that narrative, I'm just giving you an example. When they went to court, the individual was convicted, and when he was convicted, there was a sentence that went with the conviction, but he went to the Court of Appeal and he appealed the decision of the High Court. And what transpired is this. The High Court made a ruling, and they said that in instances where human beings and persons and citizens of this country feel wronged by the police and the TTPS, now that is a legitimate position, and it's believable, because we don't believe that police officers are saints. Police officers are quite capable of being rogue, and they're quite capable of doing the wrong things, or doing the right things and engaging the wrong methods. So they may be willing to enforce the law and enthusiastic about doing the correct thing, but they're doing the correct thing and engaging the wrong procedure. And sometimes you lose a matter in the courtroom because your procedure wasn't good. It's like you're doing maths. You remember in primary school and secondary school, your teacher tell you, well, you get the right result, but when I follow your working out, you say, do your workings on the piece of paper, let me see how we arrive at the answer. You have the right answer, but the wrong working.
Yeah.
So it lends itself to the teacher believing that you copy. You come up with the right answer, but with that working, when we look at the equation, how he was working it out on paper, and we follow your methodology, it could only you can't get the right answer using the wrong method. So chances are there's something about the credibility of the answer on the paper in that maths exam that raises a red herring with your teacher. He wants to believe that somebody may have told you the answer, but because I tell you you want a working, you create something that looking like a working or cheat. So that level of deceit that a student may carry, sometimes it may find itself into the workplace.
Yeah.
The police come now and they execute the warrant at San Juan Auto Supplies. The Court of Appeal said that, why didn't you all make contemporaneous notes? Or why didn't you make elite notes? Or why didn't you make any jottings in the moment when the warrant was being executed as to what the man said and didn't say?
Yeah.
Because you were saying that when we went to San Juan Auto Supplies, the man confessed and made utterances where he was more or less effecting to the officers that he guilty. So the Court of Appeal, remember, this is what I just described is what the law is now.
Yeah.
This is 2004 when this law didn't exist. So in 2004, the Court of Appeal established what we know today as backing a warrant. They said it as of 2004, what all should have done and moving forward, or what you ought to do as officers is to, when you come with the warrant, people that say you never come with no warrant and you lie. So the best way to do it is to come with your warrant, use the very same warrant and back the warrant in terms of carry a narrative of what happened and how it happened and what the man say. He said, boss, I'm sorry. And then write that down and invite him now to sign the document.
Yeah.
Now, if it is the civilian refuse to sign the document, Dave, what could happen is this. The officer is still free to say, when I invited Mr. David McIntyre to endorse the narrative that this is how things went down, he refused. I make a note of saying that he refused at 4:02 p.m. on the 29th of July 2005.
Yeah.
So they put in the date and the time, and we were standing in the kitchen area when that happened. So you're making a note of where it was and all, where in the house. Because the defense attorney coming to ask you all of that. Now, when he want to discredit you, he coming to ask you precise details. Is your lack of details sometimes work against you?
Yeah.
So when you say the date and the time and which part of the house and who was present in the room, and you have a statement from each one of the individuals present that they witnessed this happen, meaning the man refused, their statements will back it up. So you have a statement of Richard backing up your statement, David, that backing up your statement, Melissa. And then when you put the marriage of Melissa, Ruben, David, and Richard's statement together, everybody's statement lining up, and it's speaking to the fact that this is narrative and how it went down. Yeah. So it lends credibility and believability to the story. When it is you go before the court and your warrant isn't backed, it lends itself. The reason why you never back the warrant is because you didn't have a warrant in the first place to back. So imagine the judicial authority, the person, the magistrate, the judge. Now he can form an opinion. He can say, boy, this is a police officer who say he have a warrant, going to execute the warrant. He knows that the law is, and he can't say he don't know, because we all supposed to know what the law is. That's why we are trained every day as law. If you're a law enforcement officer, you're told how to execute your function.
Yep.
So where we are is the police officer very well may have had a warrant, but he just in that moment didn't back the warrant for whatever reason. That doesn't mean to say that they automatically throw the case out. It just means to say his credibility, believability has been shattered in some way. Right. But he will have to redeem himself with other sources of evidence. If it is he have other officers giving statements that corroborates and lends credibility to his version of the facts, then that's the balance of that in terms of the totality is like a puzzle. If you're missing the two pieces, you might still be able to see what the picture that the puzzle is supposed to capture. You may still be able to recognize that is you're looking at an overview of the Botanic Gardens and the president's house in the background. It's just you're missing two tiles that talking to the grass on the ground in the park in front of it.
Yeah,
you're not missing a key component of the picture. So sometimes with warrants, it's the be all and the end all of your case as a police officer. And sometimes with the warrants, it may not be the be all and end all. It depends on how good the investigation was. So when the officers who come to execute the warrant have documentation that could support and back up what they came to do, meaning everybody gives a statement and the stories line up. And everybody and the contemporaneous note is made. Contemporaneous note is a big word to show that you're making the note not 10 minutes after when you get back in your vehicle, after you leave the civilian's house, not an hour after when you get back in the station, not 3 days after when it is you're in the mood to write. You have to make the note. You have to have an officer standing there with the other 4 officers who have different functions, and that officer his function is to write down the notes.
Yeah.
So he's just there with a clipboard and paper, and he's making a note of all his observations, right? And then according to the police standing orders, remember, yes, last week I introduced you all to the police standing orders. I was saying that according to police standing orders 28, you ought to make notes of certain things. Well, I was referring to, you have minor crime, serious crime, and serious offenses, and minor offenses, and so on. The police standing orders also speaks to other things. It speaks to the fact that officers, when they have a responsibility to fulfill certain functions, that they ought to make notes, and very elaborate notes, of their observations and their findings when on a crime scene. So when they're doing an investigation, according to the police standing order 28, there is it guides you as to how to conduct your function. So an officer can come and tell you, well, I was on the scene, I didn't write no notes, I was just there to observe. He has to fulfill a function while he's on his duty, and that function would be to make elite notes, if not in his pocket diary, which is a small diary that he may have on him. He may have to make the notes in a desk diary when he gets back to the station, or some contemporaneous note on the crime scene. And in that note, he will make notes of his observations and the part he played in an investigation. So this, what I'm speaking of, is not only grounded in law, it's grounded in the guidance, that guide that speaks to how police officers ought to act. So the Frankie Boudram judgment in 2004 that I referred to, it means since the year 2004, all police officers, when they're coming to your home, if it is they want to enter, yes, they may have a warrant, but they ought to observe the practice that you ought to back your warrant and make contemporaneous notes, and make notes in your station diary, the big book in the station when it is your return, as to what transpired in your absence. Now let's corroborate all of this, right? Let's tie it back into our core topic. We must understand that as civilians out here in Trinidad and Tobago, we have a very elite position to play in the criminal justice system. There are only 11,000 police officers out there, or thereabout, right?
Yeah.
And we have only so many defense force personnel. These officers and these police officers, the military only have a certain amount of power. The defense force soldiers, they don't have the powers of
arrest
and search in the manner that the police can. In other words, the soldiers are there to secure Trinidad and Tobago. They are there to use force, perhaps in times of war. They can't just draw their weapon and start firing back at civilians if that is indeed what is happening. That is why their function is not law enforcement in the context of investigating crime. So they're not supposed to be confronting the civilians on the street. You never see a member of the defense force stopping somebody in the road and questioning them, because that is not their function. Now, if you see a member of the defense force on the road sometimes, and they seem to be involved in a law enforcement activity, they ought to be in the company of other police officers. Sometimes the police carry members of the defense force as a supplemental unit with them. So when you hear they're going into a hotspot, let us say some area in Laventille or some area in Barcadere in San Fernando, or they're going somewhere in Point Fortin that is deemed a hotspot. Or they're going to La Hoqueta, they're going into Maloney, and they're going at a particular hour. And their intelligence, we don't know what their intelligence is. Their intelligence may be that we got a call that it have men with AR-15 weapons up there, high-powered, serious weapons. And so in other words, the police had to go. They had to go with the elite team. Maybe it's the interagency task force. Maybe it's SORT. Maybe it's whatever version that exists now. So you go with your specially trained officers, and them ain't going there with no 38 if that is the weapon of choice now. They ain't going with no simple 9mm handgun.
Right.
Meaning the police officers. They had to go there toting, as we would say on the street. So civilians need to bear in mind that your rights, the Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago, allows us certain fundamental rights. Section 4 of the Constitution speaks to, regardless of whatever your race is, or whatever your origin is, or your color, or religion, or your sex, that you have human rights. So let me use it in Trini language. Whether you're African, whether you're Indian, whether you're Chinese, whether you're mixed with any portion of those three races or three ethnicities, your rights are not superior to or inferior to any other. So whether you're a member of the Syrian community, Lebanese community, your rights as a Syrian Lebanese member of Trinidad and Tobago isn't more elite than the person who lives in the Bitam, or lives in Mova, or lives in Mbakade, or Lavantil, or Larkita, Maloney. Everybody here, we stand on Trini soil as equal persons before the law. So your right to life, liberty, security of person, enjoyment of property, that right to life, liberty, security of person, enjoyment of property, that stands in Mova, in Ashak, equally as strong as a 5-story elite structure in Westmoreland or Gulfview. That household in Lavantil, propped up with galvanized, if that is what it is, right? Or posts. Whatever, however crass the structure may be. That house has as much right to be as the person who has an elite residence in Charlottesville in Tobago, or in Scarborough, or any part of Trinidad and Tobago. And the people who dwell in those houses, they have equal opportunity. They can't be treated as if, the system works for the rich, but they don't work for the poor. It's supposed to work for everybody on equal footing. So when the police come to you, they can't come to say they're coming into a poor man's area. So therefore, they could come there and do what they want, behave how they want, rant and misbehave. And the law doesn't extend itself to them. So that is why, if it is indeed when police officers go after the vehicle of persons running away from them or refusing to stop, they have to respect that man's rights, because he has the right to life and the right to be free, which is the right to liberty, and the right to security, in as much as a man who is willing to stand and talk to the police and confront them and have a dialogue. So running from the police is not a crime. But civilians who know that they have no reason to hide, or no reason to avoid the police. If it is that is your position and you're out there, then do the correct thing. If you have no cocoa in the sun, stop and have a dialogue with the police. But in all fairness, I can't be telling you to do that, and then when you stop now, it's bullet in your skin, and you find yourself dead, your family deprived and depraved, and you have a commissioner of police who's saying, well, there's an investigation to follow, and we will get the results. And then 2 years after, the 27th of June 2020, you're finally having justice served. Justice served, David, is justice that is prompt and in sequence and in even flow with the incident, meaning that justice can't be 20 years down the line. So like in the Sean Luke situation, right? And I'm not straying, I'm just talking about timelines. When it is we have the mother of the deceased stating that this incident take place back in 2006, and we're looking at 2022, and they were convicted, and then they won their appeal. So much so that they have a new trial going to start. Bear in mind that these persons were represented by the legal aid. And though the matter goes before the court to be listed again in the later part of this month, to be timetabled to when it could restart, we are still subject to when the lawyers who are involved, because one would believe the same lawyers may be engaged, when they are free. What may happen is, what if it is these lawyers are telling themselves, I took this matter legal aid. The state was paying me. They weren't exactly paying elite money. I have bills to pay. I just spent the whole of February and March and April in a trial. I can't start this matter now until next year,
Right.
So the matter delayed another year. The mother is saying, I'm not going back and get no evidence. That is the editorial that is being carried in the newspaper. The mother is hurt and she's saying, I am fed up with the system. I waited from 2006 to 2022 for justice. I got justice and it was taken away from me because the fellas won on an appeal, so to speak, if we may put it that way. But the appeal was determined in their favor for that required a retrial. Sometimes these retrials take another 4 years, Don't be surprised that if it does. I have seen instances where retrials they run 4 years. So we will be looking at, let us say the matter starts in 2026.
Yeah.
We will be looking at 20 years after the boy died. If Sean Luke had lived today, Sean Luke would have been, 26 years old, so to speak.
Yeah.
So this is where we are. The citizens retracting now. We're getting back to where we are. The citizens out there need to understand that we all have rights, and you have the right to enjoy your property. You have the right to resist the police if they come to your property without a warrant. That is your right.
Yeah.
You have the right to resist them if they don't have a warrant. You could tell them that you can't come in my place. They can't come and say, because I am police, I don't have a warrant and I come in inside. No, you can refuse that. But once they have a warrant, they ought to produce the warrant and they ought to walk you through the warrant. I mean, I've heard police officers, just talking on the streets. When you're chatting with them, sometimes they tell you that, I just point the paper in the direction and tell them I have a warrant and then they enter. Now, remember when the police come in, according to our former commissioner of police, they don't enter your premises with macaroni pie in their hand. They come with guns.
Yeah.
So the nature, the tool of the trade is they will have a gun, and when you see a gun in front of you, for those of us out there who never see one or not accustomed having to confront one, whether the gun pointed at you or it's in a holster, a gun is a gun. And when the police addressing you, he don't address you in the Queen's English. He may not be addressing you in the tone that you and I are addressing each other, in the way that it is coming over the airwaves to members of the public listening to us.
No,
He's not using the Queen's English, and he's certainly not using elite language. he addressing you in the most coarse, unbecoming language.
Yeah.
He's shouting, is spit and spittoon coming in your direction. He's ranting and raving, and you could be yourself. And in that motion there, you might consent to anything to get a man to lower his voice and to get this situation out of the way with. And before you know it, you were intimidated into surrendering your premises to them, and they didn't even have a warrant. So sometimes if it is, and I mean, this might sound like I'm putting information out there that we don't want to be accused of educating the public along the lines. But if it is, you have something that you don't want, or that could get you in trouble, and the police doesn't have a warrant, you're quite within your right to, at that stage here now. You're not doing anything, or you may not be doing anything wrong by telling them you don't want them on your compound. Come back with the warrant. So the correct thing may be to tell the police, well, I have something illegal here. Forgive me for having it, and I'm making myself available to you. If you choose to execute the letter of the law and take me before the court and deny me bail, well, I welcome that, and I look forward to sitting in the jail indefinitely and not having a prompt trial. That is the flip side of refusing to allow the officer in. So the police now, having heard, they don't need any direction from me. The civilians, having heard what I said, they may understand where their rights lie. Now, another thing I've left out is you must get the name and the regimental number of the police you're talking to. So David McIntyre, when it is you're confronted by the police, when it is the police you're parking in Port of Spain, and he want to ask you why it is you're parking there, you're quite right to, before you answer him, to ask him, officer, my name is David McIntyre. What is your name and what is your regimental number? And he's supposed to tell you, He has no reason to hide. If his name is Guy Smiley and his regimental number is 125 Sesame Street, he's supposed to say that. If it is his number is 123 and his name is Hercules, he's supposed to say that. And you are entitled to ask him, and what station are you working out of? And he's supposed to tell you that. What is wrong with him telling you his name and what station? And he asking you more than you're more than you prepared to tell him. You want to know what's your name, what you're doing in Port of Spain, what you're doing here, what it is you have in that bag. I mean, you can ask him similar questions. You can ask him what brand of phone he have, where he get up, how long he's at police, how long he working in that unit. Why it is you ask him them questions. You can ask him back anything because as far as he's concerned, I in the position of power here. And I dictated the pace, and after God is me, the police. So right now, God in here is me here, so answer to me. That is the approach that you're facing. So that is an intimidating kind of experience. Now, apart from your right to life, liberty, security, and personal enjoyment of property, you have the right to privacy and the right to family life. If it is when the police come to your home, you there with your 2 children, both of them under the age of 10, and only watching a video of Black singing Hulk, and everybody jumping in, Sean jumping in, making all the songs that go with the narrative of the music. And he comes now and he kick down your front door. What he's doing is he's disrupting your family life. He's disrupting your right to privacy. So all of these things may be actionable things, actionable causes that you, the civilians, can act upon. In other words, when the police do these things and they violate your right, find out the name and regimental, find out what station they come from. You may have CCTV footage, and when I mean the elite home camera set up in the house. You can have it in the dining area, so at least that captures the police in their essence, and it will show that it will corroborate your story. You may not need to put the camera in an area where the police could so obviously see it, but put it in. It have all kind of discrete cameras now. So you protecting yourself from law enforcement if law enforcement want to abuse their power. I'm not saying, there is nothing wrong with doing that, because you know something, if the police doing the correct thing when they come to your house, your camera footage could only vindicate them and show what great officers they are. Right? It ain't doing them no harm. The right thing is the right thing Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. The right thing is the right thing once you execute it and do it procedurally in the correct way. So when it is people are calling for police to carry body cameras, and you're hearing there's a constant shortage, or you're hearing that there were 1,800 pieces, but none of them were operationalized. It can only bring suspicion into the hearts and the minds of the population of this country, and make people want to believe that, you know something, the reason why it is law enforcement don't do things in the way that they ought to do things is because they want to do things in the way that they ought not to do it. Right? In other words, for every reaction, there's a reactant. For every action, there is a cause of action, there's a root cause. So if it is we find ourselves as civilians being violated by police officers in terms of their language, in terms of they telling you, move from this side of the street, but they're not explaining to you why, then we need to ask questions. So it brings me to another thing. When it is you're in a position where a police comes and he tells you you're under arrest, and then he proceeds to put his hand on you and you pull away and run, you haven't done anything wrong, you know. All right, let me say that again in case somebody misinterprets what I'm saying, or they think they're hearing wrong. A police officer, when he comes and he tells you that you're under arrest, the next thing he's supposed to do is to explain to you why you're under arrest. So telling you you're under arrest is not enough. That doesn't make what he's attempting to do lawful. So you're supposed to be told, you're under arrest, if it is you are under arrest, and you're supposed to be told, we have reason to suspect that you are responsible for the breaking at Massey stores in Sanwo on Sunday, the 19th of July, 2022. You fit the description. We have had intelligence. We have you under a monitor for the past 2 days. And we are now here to arrest you, to restrain you, to detain you, and take you to the police station for questioning. All of that's supposed to be said to you. They can't just come and tell you you're under arrest and grab you by your throat, kick you down on the ground, stamp on the back of your head, kick you in your ribs, throw you in the back of the vehicle, and carry you bleeding to the station. Now, one must understand that sometimes you get a man get charged for resisting arrest, obscene language, and assaulting an officer. We call it sometimes the Holy Trinity. You get lashed for the Holy Trinity of resisting arrest, assaulting an officer, and sometimes obstructing the police in the execution of the duty. Sometimes it depends on how they want to mix it, but it's always the resisting arrest and obstructing in the officer, or assaulting in the officer, or obstructing the officer, or sometimes 3 of the 4, 4 of the 4. If it is you're not explained that the reason for you being under arrest and you pull away, the officer may say, well, that's an assault. An assault is causing someone to feel fearful based on the things that you do and the words that you use and the actions that you engage. So I could assault you, David, by calling you. I don't even have to call you. What if it is I'm on air right now, I tell you, here we're going. It's me and you on the road tonight, 7 o'clock. Bear that in mind. You have to leave that station today.
Mm-hmm.
You may interpret that, what a man just said me there, boy? So, in other words, you feel fearful based on my diction, my intonation, based on the things that I said, the words that I use, and the context of the words. And that in itself is assaulting you without you and I seeing each other. You could pick up the phone or assault somebody by way of social media or by way of some mechanism, WhatsApp, by conversations, dialogues, and everything like that. So when it is you pull away from the police officer and you use obscene language towards him, that in itself it is an assault. It escalates into more than an assault, where you could batter the officer, assault and battery, or you could occasion bodily harm, which is you cause him slight injury, which is you might bruise his finger or something when you pull away, or you might cause him serious harm, where in his attempt to restrain you, when you're placed under arrest, he break his pinky finger, his little finger, or he break his thumb. That is an assault. That is treated as an assault. It may be treated as serious bodily harm. What if you hit the officer a cuff and you break the man's teeth? That is serious bodily harm. Or what if it is you break his skin, you hit him a concrete block and the man's skin tear and he bleed? That is wounding. What if it is hitting the concrete block in his head? That is attempted murder, because they hit him at a critical part of his body that could cause death.
Yeah.
And if he dies, well, they get charged for murder. So on the scales of offenses against the person, on the bottom of the scale is the very elite example I use, where your language may cause somebody to feel fearful. And your language and your use of language, your actions, your words could result in an assault. The same way that if you escalate that into physical activity, it's like a ladder. When you move up the ladder, from the base of the ladder, you move up, you get at the point where it's an occasioning bodily harm, where you cause a bruise, a laceration on the person, and a scrape, as we say on the street, a contusion. And if you go higher up the ladder now, you have serious harm, like you break a bone, you break the man's thumb. And you go up further up the ladder now, you have wounding, where you cause the man to bleed. And when you go further up the ladder now, you have attempted murder, you hit him a bottle in the head. And then bam, you cause death, which is the top of the ladder murder. So things escalate like a ladder. So the officer may say that, oh, you assaulted him, when it is you resist arrest. But you must examine the facts and the circumstances to determine whether that was indeed so. It's not as simple as he says so and that is so. So you go in a courtroom now and evidence has to evolve in the courtroom. And then the determinations are made, the findings are made by the magistrate or the judge. So people out there, civilians out there, must know that when it is an officer approaches you and he wants to question you, that is his responsibility to question you, because he's there to protect and serve. That is his function. You ought to comply as civilians. Your responsibility in order to ensure that these societies are lawful societies, to assist in the lawful conduct of activity. It is not just the police there to act as manpower to cause 1 million people to do what 11,000 of them must cause to happen. In other words, let me say it in another way. You cannot expect 11,000 police officers to police 1 million people. We must police ourselves. We must do the right thing, the correct thing. So if law enforcement want to ask a question of you, don't jump in your vehicle on the 27th. I'm just using this as an example. I'm not saying this is what happened. But on the 27th of June 2020, let us say the police were confronting the interagency task force, were in the process of confronting and following Joel Jacob, Noel Diamond, and Israel Moses Clinton to ask questions of them. And they didn't understand. Sometimes there's a lack of wisdom and lack of understanding that's lead to your demise, you know. Maybe if it is they understood what their rights were as individuals, and the police understood what their responsibility were in terms of use of reasonable force. That whole incident with a little education and a little sensitivity could have been dealt with in a different manner. We could have avoided all this public outcry, and we could have avoided 8 persons having to stand before a magistrate Deberdine, and the issue of bail being addressed, and men in their 40s and 50s who may before this incident have been of good character find themselves now where their character is being called into question. And sometimes this understanding of your rights and the law and how the law ought to be enforced, this understanding helps to boost public confidence in the justice system. Now, to move on a bit, rather than dwell on the bottom of the academic application of the law, I'm looking at the newspaper clippings. I'm looking at today's newspaper, and I'm seeing our goodly MacDonald Jacob, the Commissioner of Police, talking that we live in times in Trinidad and Tobago where the TTPS needs all hands on deck to stop the scourge of criminality, and that he hopes that the charging of these 8 officers is not going to deter the psyche of the other officers in the service from acting in a manner that is consistent with the mandate to protect, serve with pride. Because let us put ourselves in the position of police officers in this moment, David. You could imagine if it is, I am a member of the interagency task force now, and I am going on an exercise tonight. You could imagine, I would imagine that they're going to be extra careful because 8 brothers went before the court yesterday. You must be gun shy now. So in other words, it could affect you in a negative way and a positive way. The negative way is that you don't want to even do your lawful function because you're discouraged, you're despondent. Because you know that officers who meant well, your colleagues who perhaps had an unblemished record, went on a duty, and a narrative is being carried by the media and in the press and in social media that is not a true representation of what transpired on the day in question, the 27th of June 2020, and that we know the facts. And because only a snippet of the evidence is out there, all of us now are being interpreted in a particular way. And now we have to go through the long-winded process of dealing with the justice system. You know what is going to happen at this stage. I'm looking at, and I'm not going to call the lawyer's name, the lawyers who are appearing for the 8 officers. Those lawyers now, they are not going to be paid with corn, you know. They're not going to be paid with melanjon and pumpkin, and they certainly ain't going to be asking for shares in a limited liability company. It's hard cash, liquid cash, as we say.
Yeah.
So the fees associated with representation in a murder, it doesn't go lower than it's upward of $50,000. Depend, and I'm just using that as a ground level figure. We ain't talking about the ceiling figure. That it could escalate into a lot more depending on the experience and the CV of the lawyer, if we may put it that way. Yeah. So in other words, what we may say and what the public will very well understand, that lawyers don't come cheap. And I would like to know if the police welfare unit is going to support these officers in terms of providing the financial wherewithal for proper legal representation.
That's right.
And when I say proper, I don't mean to say there is improper representation, but there is elite. The same way you have an elite vehicle, like a Mercedes-Benz and a Lexus, and you have Audis and so on. You don't want a law student or somebody who's fresh out of law school, who might be on the B12 level or the Toyota level, representing you in the highest, when you're facing the highest charge in the land. What, in my experience, it reveals is that all you get from the police welfare office or department is a fraction. You get a little startup money, a little help. Sometimes they might give you $5,000. That ain't even 1/10.
I tell you.
That ain't 1/10 of what the lawyers charge. And the lawyers want the money up front, eh? The lawyer said this is not furniture in courts, furniture or furniture plus you're buying, you know.
Yeah.
When you go to talk to a lawyer, he wants his money and he wants it now. So if you know you want KFC, you don't go and join the KFC line, and when you reach to the top, you want to negotiate a price on a box of chicken.
Yeah.
It's either you have the money, you don't have the money. If you don't have the money, you go and pick fruits by the neighbor.
Yeah.
So Jacobs is as any leader, and my heart breaks for and I'm saying that in a very empathic and sympathetic way. It breaks for the officers in the context of I am seeing both sides of the equation, and I'm trying to deal with this fact in a very balanced way. I might be criticized for sharing information with the civilian population out there as to how to deal with police when it is they come to your house with warrants, and how to resist them if you have to resist them. But let me make one more point before I escalate into another area. When it is a police comes and tell you you're under arrest, and you know that you have no cocoa in the sun, you could stand right there and listen to him. And if it is he takes you to the station and he keeps you there 2 days and 3 days in the station, and then he releases you, you may have a suit against the state, you know. Yeah. Because they didn't have a reasonable basis to take you into custody. They certainly didn't have a probable cause to take you into their care. They take you to the station, they do an investigation, or they take you to the station and do no investigation. You know how many little black boys out there get picked up, put in a cell for 3 days, and then they release them? They wasn't told what they was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. And they decided, you know what, we go grab him, put him in a cell, and they keep him there 2 days hungry. He ain't get to bathe for 2 days. He wearing the same clothes. He ain't get to brush his teeth. He ain't see what daylight look like. He don't even know where's the time, right? If he get to eat, he getting to eat 1 o'clock when they bring in the food cold. He ain't got no breakfast because you're entitled to breakfast at a station. It usually comes around 7:30 in the morning. You're entitled to lunch, which comes around 12:30. Yeah. Sometimes, you know, in traffic, we can never keep a timeline. So you might get breakfast for lunch and lunch for dinner. So sometimes if it is the station short staff, who knows? That might be their reason for the food and reaching to you on time. But you ain't getting an elite meal. And some people tell you, are getting cheese when it is a lactose intolerant. But them don't care how intolerant you are. They only intolerant of you.
Yes.
Whether you're intolerant of what they're serving you, that's your business. And when your family come, if it is, you know that the law is, the Police Service Regulations 2007 says that when it is a man is in custody, that the family may bring food, meaning that may is a word that indicates that it is their duty to bring if they wish, and the police may accept it, right? In other words, if the police is of the view that there is no food at the station, or the caterer didn't bring boxes to give to the men who are in custody, or the men who we have waiting here to be investigated or to question, the police are free to examine the box of chicken to make sure it has no gun, no knife, no bullet, nothing that other than food inside there, and then receive it, make a note in the diary that John Paul brought a box of chicken. We examined the box, there's nothing illegal in it. It really is chicken. And then they take it and they give you the meal. So this thing away going to a station when your brother lock up and he tell you that, oh, we're not accepting meals. They ought to tell you why they're not accepting it. Tell me you're not accepting it because we provided a meal. Tell me you're not accepting it because we don't know if it is you really, brother, and if it is you bringing something that the poison man will tell me that. You have reason to suspect that you know that meal may not be something that is in the best interest of the man locker, but don't run me like a dog out of the station. So there must be an explanation, but in law, in the regulations, it does make allowances for civilians to receive meals while at station. It's always up to the discretion of the police to examine the content of what is being brought to determine whether it is in the interest of the individual who they're bringing it for. Because what if it is Muslim and he don't eat anything that's not halal? Then they ought to cater for the religious needs of the individual in their care. In the same way that if you have a woman arrested and she spent 2 days in the station, given the fact that the anatomy of a woman is made up in a peculiar and particular way, it's not the way that a man's body is made up. Sometimes she may need to take a bath. You might be able to deprive the man, but you ought not to deprive the woman because this could lead to infections and so on, and her health may be compromised.
Yeah.
So when women are at station, they treat them in a different manner because it's a woman. It's not that you're discriminating, but because of the special needs, you have to engage special methods. And women, when they're in the station, ought to only be interacting in terms of physical contact with another female. A male can come and search a woman, a female officer or two. So you avoid any allegations. So in looking at arrests, the final point I want to make about that is this. If it is we in a carnival, Juve morning and bottle pelting on both sides, and the police come and arrest 30 people, remember, in that moment, you don't have the time to explain to them that you pelting bottle, that what you're doing is illegal, and that you're breaking the law. And as a result of that, our position is we need to take it into custody. Remember, the police breaks in bottle too.
Yeah.
Remember, we're dealing with is a riot and a brawl. So you have to examine the circumstances for what it is. So sometimes you arrest everybody and you take them to station. You place them in a cell. And at a reasonable time now. Remember, the same officers was in a busy exercise there. They could have been physically exhausted by the get to station. They can't just compose themselves at station and in that few seconds begin to individually explain to these individuals that what you all were doing amounted to a crime. You were causing a breach of the public peace. You were throwing weapons. You're causing criminal damage to property, right? You were assaulting civilians. We have reports from civilians that you lashed them when you pelt. You may not have intent to hit John Paul, but when you miss Harry, you bust John Paul's face. So in that moment, persons were arrested in what we may call a dragnet, and we just take down everybody. So in the moment, the science of the moment didn't allow for the explanation to come, but yet still you were arrested. The explanation for the reason why you're under arrest could come after. So it don't have to come. There are instances when it may not need to be. It may not need to happen in the very moment. So the police could put their hands on you, take you into custody, tell you you're under arrest, and put the explanation to you. Explain to you why, whilst you're in the vehicle going into Port of Spain, because they're trying to secure you. Because remember, you are two civilians cussing. Two big. Remember, the police is only two of them come to do the arrest, to execute the arrest. Them doing a traffic duty and a man misbehave and they go to arrest him. And you have 10 civilians around them. They know that they have high-powered weapons. If these civilians get their hand on these weapons, they could cause more damage to not just to me, but to the community as a whole. So in the moment, what the police do is they arrest you and they explain to you while you're going to the station now, the reason for your arrest. In other words, they find a more opportune time. But the court will examine the recency of the explanation in relation to the arrest that was executed. In other words, try to see what is the time frame, the time lapse between when you arrest him and when the explanation comes, to determine whether you did what was reasonable in the circumstances. So to every rule, there's an exception, and to every explanation, you have to look at things from different angles in order to ascertain the sensibility in terms of the logic and the sequencing of what is being explained. We back to where Jacob said, and I want to quote. This is what McDonald Jacobs was saying today in today's news there. He said, and I'm quoting here, we will continue using our use of force policy, which is consistent with the Criminal Law Act that grants us the opportunity to use necessary force. Remember, David, I had read just now what is in the criminal law report. The criminal law report explains in very cogent language that according to section 4, a person may use such force as is reasonable in the circumstances in the prevention of crime, or in effecting or assisting in the lawful arrest of offenders, or suspected offenders, or persons unlawfully at large. So there are instances when force will be used. Force will be used in circumstances where you're preventing a crime. So let us say, and I'm giving you a good example here. This is an example from years ago. A police officer was in the line to pay a TNTech bill, but he was in civilian clothes. A man came into the line, and then he jumped the line and pulled a gun on the cashier at the TNTech facility. When he pulled the gun, the cashier released into his care cash, and the man decided to run out of the building, and the police officer gave chase, because remember, that is his training. Yeah. He may not be in police uniform, and he may not be on active duty at that time, but you don't shut off and shut on, you don't switch off and switch on. Your training is to enforce the law, and when it comes into the public space, you had a law enforcement officer there, and he did nothing. The public first quick to criticize and say, well, boy, the The man is a police. He have the training and the wisdom and the understanding how to deal with this sort of situation. And he played a civilian card in that moment. So the officer gave chase and he used force, meaning he drew his firearm and shot the individual while he was running away. Shot the individual while he was running away to detain him. Now, where he shot him was the issue, and that's the point I'm making. He didn't shoot the individual and kill him. The individual was shot in that part of his anatomy that is not life-threatening. So when it is the police going to shoot at a civilian, they ought to shoot. When you shoot at the torso, remember, in the torso, the torso is, let me say, between your hip and your chin. That chest and stomach and rib area. The reason why you have ribs is God saw that you have kidneys and liver and soft tissue underneath there that needs some extra protection. So when you're running and you fall long drunk Juve morning, you don't damage your kidney and you don't rupture your liver because it was winding in a van.
Yeah.
That rib cage was put there for a purpose. He knew that he need to put in some ribs there to ensure that when indiscretion steps in, God-given wisdom kicks in.
Yeah.
So the individual, when it is the police firing shots at your rib cage, they know that behind that rib cage, this AR-15 weapon I'm using, it had the capacity to pong a bullet through that rib cage and to mash up them kidneys and destroy that liver and to compromise the integrity of the lung. So in other words, the police very well know that when you want to use deadly force, fire the bullets into the torso.
That's right.
As opposed to if it is you fire it into the man calf muscle where you could just remove some tissue. Or if you shoot him on the big toe where you could just remove a toenail. Or shoot him on his leg where you could incapacitate him, and chances are you may not deprive him of life. So in the use of force, our goodly McDonald Jacobs is indicating that the police will continue to make use of their use of force policy. And they will continue to bear in mind that people have human rights. So use of force policy is tied into what we call the principle of somebody having rights. And if the person have rights and these individuals has rights, everyone has rights as recognized under the Constitution to the right to life, liberty, security of person, enjoyment of property, and so on. Then the police ought not to, when they're using force, they ought to use force consistent with that right to life. And they ought to be mindful that our human beings, we have a dignity that God has recognized, that as long as He's giving us that life to breathe and to live and to make decisions, the police ought not to deprive you of that.
Right.
Unless it is you pose a threat to them. And even if it is you pose a threat to them, they still can't use deadly force.
That's right.
So
Before we got to pull the curtains down. We've gotten to that time. But you can finish what you say.
Right. So we closing off at this time, or we stopping for a break?
No. We shutting it down from now. As of now.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah.
So in terms of where we are, Dave, I think that we've covered this MOVA situation as best as we can. We understand where use of force could be engaged and where it cannot be engaged. And I think that the public ought to be mindful that don't be judgmental of police officers. Be judgmental of the society and the fact that as civilians and as citizens of this country, when we have 11,000 law enforcement officers providing an elite function, it is not easy to be under the microscope of the public eye. You must know what your rights are, and you must know that the police have a function to fulfill. And if it is you obey the law and listen to what the police have to say and what they try to engage you in, 9 out of 10 times it may be right. They may get it right. But try to do the right thing at all times. And to the law enforcement officers out there, let this be an example that civilians can't be abused. That the law that work for you could work against you too.
Exactly.
So David, enjoy the rest of your evening and be safe as you make your way home.
Okay, thank you, my brother. Same to you.
Same to you. Blessings.
Okay, thank you. Straight ahead, we got news at 6 with Sparkle McIntosh.
Power 102 Digital.
Yeah.
We sound like home. Power 102 Digital. Streaming 24/7 on